Welcome to the KolbeCast, episode 90. Thank you for joining us for this Vocations Week podcast. Today, Kolbe teachers Adam and Pamela Castor join us to discuss vocations, along with living out the liturgical year in our homes. Mr. and Mrs. Castor share some wonderful advice about discernment, along with sharing their own journeys that led to marriage, family, and Kolbe Academy. We hope that you'll enjoy the show.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie, liturgical musician, popcorn and podcast fanatic, and Kolbe homeschooling mom to 4 lads and lasses of middle and high school age.
And this is Stephen, homeschooling father of 5 and director of development for Kolbe Academy.
Kolbe Academy students have the opportunity to participate in a special Vocations Retreat this week, featuring speakers and sessions on a variety of topics relating to listening to God's Word and discovering His plan for each student's life. Here to tell us about it is Mr. Adam Castor, an instructor of theology for Kolbe Academy, and his wife Pamela, who is one of Kolbe's online elementary instructors. Hello to you both.
Hello, great to be here. Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you so much.
Sure, it's good to meet you both, and we've been enjoying seeing you guys and the various things you've been doing for Kolbe. I know, Mr. Castor, you did an announcement for this Vocations Retreat for us, and we also saw you on the Kolbe Christmas program and everything, and Mrs. Castor, I understand you teach in the elementary school, so I'm looking forward to getting to know you a bit. Would you guys tell us about yourselves and your family and how you happened upon Kolbe, whatever else you'd like us to know?
Absolutely. Pam, if you wanted to start, that'd be great.
Absolutely. Yeah. So how we came upon Kolbe is a very, very interesting story because it was a few years, I'd say maybe 3 years ago. I met Chrissy Asmara at a homeschool event and in our neighborhood. And she just happened to plant the seed like, hey, I work for Kolbe Academy. And I didn't really know what it was, anything at that time, but just the name kind of stuck in my head. And then, was it last fall? I think we were gifted from God, a new baby. And with the new baby, it created us to have a larger family. Now we have 7 children, but we outgrew our old minivan. Mm-hmm. And so we were really looking and praying, Lord, we know you want us to have this beautiful child. But how can we, get anywhere? And we needed some financial needs to buy a new van. Mm-hmm. And so Kolbe came along and it popped up again on our heart. And I was able to apply and got a job teaching 3rd grade, which I absolutely love. I've always been a teacher. And then God called us for a while for me to homeschool. And Kolbe has been the perfect bridge for us to be able to still homeschool our children the way we want to. And then for me to, share my gifts with others. So that has been a great blessing. And I fell in love with the community, and Adam was kind of watching I think from the background, and I was like, you gotta be a part of this. You gotta come join us. Like, you have so many great gifts, and so that's kind of where Adam's story kind of bridges in.
Well, that's a terrific segue. Thank you so much, Pam. So, so my story, I've felt as though I was a part of the Kolbe family long before this year. This is my first year teaching with Kolbe Academy in the high school theology department. And along with that, I am employed in full-time ministry as the director of Faith Life at a parish in New Hampshire. Okay. I love ministry. I've been involved in church ministry since I was confirmed in high school. Whether it be volunteer or paid positions, my heart's always been for ministry and sharing the gift of my faith that I was given at such an early age, because I know many people don't really find their faith and their relationship with the Lord until later on in life. And so, realizing that this was such a gift, it was always something that was so impressed upon my heart. And Kolbe Academy, having an opening in the high school theology department was really just another way that I could share this passion, another way that I could share all that I have learned over so many years. I just finished a week ago my master's program in theology, and so being able to apply this in my ministry and now at Kolbe is it's such a gift. It's Pam and I, we've been gifted so much in our lives, and we understand fully that we're called to give that away, and really share that. So here we are. We love Kolbe Academy. We feel so welcome and so much a part of the community that we plan on being with the school for many, many years. So as long as God allows, really. In addition, Pam and I together, which is a lot of fun, because Pam and I, we enjoy working together and doing things together. We picked up a creative writing club as well, which
Yes.
has been a blast. And I know your daughter is a part of creative writing club, and we
Yep.
meet once
She
a
really
month,
enjoys it.
and we have some writing that the students do in between, and that's a blast as well. So even though Kolbe is virtual, I'm sure the biggest hesitation for new families is, okay, well, how is my child going to be social? How is there going to be that community and classroom environment? And I'll encourage families and tell them that it's here. It's very much in a strong way. It's here. The school is very creative and uses all the technology at its disposal to create that international community. I have a student in one of my sections who is in the Philippines. I know Pam has students that are, we're an international just community coming together, really under the intercession of Maximilian Kolbe, and just, in the name of Christ. That's our focus. That's our heart. And it's nice to see that so prevalent at a Catholic school and so alive.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Adam, there. I think that's what definitely when I came in last year when the elementary department opened, I was like, yay, there's a spot for me. And God provided. And just fell in love with it's a whole family. Like we're teaching, internationally, but yet all under Maximilian Kolbe, just we're all Catholic. It's universal. Like we've all got this, it's family feeling. It's not a school where I've been in a brick and mortar and public school where it just has a total different feel when you're praying together with the children. And, you can just open up your heart in such a different way, and just the idea of, I know as we talk about Vocations Week, like just that there's more to us than just that there's a deeper calling. And I love that we can just talk to everybody from just such a young age. I think it's so important.
Yeah.
It absolutely highlights that universality of our church. That really brings it home, doesn't it? When we hear about our children talking about classmates all over the place and
Exactly.
things happening all over the world, they have such a better grasp of that than I think I did at their age. So yeah. Okay, guys, if I say vocation, you say what? I say vocation, you say
You say vocation.
Discernment.
okay. Okay.
So much discernment. Yeah.
Okay.
I say holiness.
Okay.
Kolbe is a place that challenges students and staff to be holy. So our first vocation is holiness, or as Saint Therese put it, our first vocation is love. She says, my vocation is love, to love the Lord with everything I have. But in addition to that, it's a double street that runs toward the Lord. We have this vocation to holiness, but within this vocation to holiness, there is also a specific call placed upon each and every heart. And so for our students, for everyone, for us to remember that God has you in mind in such a unique way that he would create and craft a call that is specific to your life and to you. That's something we all need to know. And that's why this retreat is so important, that we would block out 2 days of the school year for it. This time to talk about discernment, to talk about vocations. I hope and pray that every single one of our students takes advantage of these 2 days, because there are things for all grade levels, elementary, middle school, high school, that are being offered during this time. But we all have this call placed upon us, that God calls us, And when we say yes to this call, that is when we will find the fulfillment of our lives, our joy, all of our desires. We will be so full. We'll be more full than we have ever imagined we could be when we say yes to this call upon our lives. You know, specifically Pam and I, we've been married 14 years. So we said yes to the call, to what God was asking us to do, and it's had us grow in such a deep way in holiness. And what I tell my students, or those that I'm working with that are preparing to receive sacraments, especially confirmation, you know, and when we talk about baptism, these sacraments, it's not just a sacrament we receive one day and then it stops working within us. It's a sacrament that rests and dwells within us, and it really grows and matures, and it just blossoms. It blossoms within us. And our vocation to marriage, as both of you probably have seen, you know, in your own calls and vocations, it's just had us grow in holiness in ways that we have never imagined would ever happen. And it's hard. Holiness is hard. You know, it's not for the weak-minded or weak-hearted. It is a challenge. It is a challenging road, but our Lord reminds us that, you know, his burden compared to that of the world is light. It is easy because he carries it with us. So I could talk all day on things like this. Pam, I don't know if when you say vocation, what what do you think of, Pam? I'd love to hear.
So when I say vocation, first word that comes to mind is just discernment. I wasn't raised in a Catholic family. You know, I was a convert later in life. Actually, it was like my first year of teaching, actually, so quite a few years ago. And so the talk growing up never was about vocation. You know, for me, it was like, what are you going to do when you graduate? You're going to go to college. You're going to get a job. And my family, we just all happen to be teachers. So, you know, there's definitely, you know, God pouring in those gifts for us. You know, so for me, learning what vocation meant later on as an adult, just really came to mind that, you know, I think that we need to just talk to children to know that, you know, there's, you know, more decisions as to what, you know, you're called to do. It's not a profession. It's more of who you are and what God has designed for you or wants you and calls you to do in your life. And I know in our home personally, we always just, you know, just leave it open. You know, we joke about our youngest son being Pope, and our older girls call him, "You're gonna be Pope Joseph," or, you know, like, we just joke around because maybe he will someday. You know, who knows? You know, and just leaving that door just wide open. And, you know, if they are, you know, saying, you know, wanting to learn more about, you know, a certain direction, you know, they want to learn more about sisterhood, that we as parents just seek out that information for them, you know, and help and guide them in any direction. You know, we're just continuing, you know, at dinner time and, you know, when we're talking about the homily from Mass or whatever, you know, just leaving those conversations and those doors open for them to know, like, you know, are you listening? You know, what is God calling you? Where do you feel like that is? And making sure that we provide opportunities for them, that when they come up in our area, that they take them. You know, they might need a little nudge to go, you know, different discernment retreats or things. We don't live where there's a lot of, you know, we have mostly girls in our family. So we have 5 girls, 2 boys. So the idea of sisterhood and, you know, leading into that life, we talk about probably that a lot. There aren't a lot of sisters in our area where we live. It's just, we're in a rural town. But my goodness, there on Ash Wednesday, I don't know who she was. I didn't get to talk to her, but there was a sister at our Mass, and it's a very small church that we go to. And our kids were like gawking, like, mom, there's a sister here, you know? So it's, you know, it's just beautiful. Like, they got excited to see her there. And we didn't get a chance, you know, unfortunately, to say hi or introduce ourselves. but I love just that there's that possibility, and that these are beautiful people chosen by God. So I don't know, discernment, just constantly just being open to whatever God calls us to, and just knowing that it's really ultimate his decision and yours, but mostly his.
Yeah. I love that, Pam, and I hate to put you on the spot, but I would love for you to share a little more about your conversion story that you mentioned earlier on there, because it's pretty powerful.
It is. All right, I will happily share it. So let's see. So I was in college, and Adam and I were friends, and he invited me to join him on a retreat, Steubenville East Retreat in Attleboro, Massachusetts. And I went, okay, I was kind of searching for something more. I knew that there was more. I grew up Protestant, so I knew God, when we attended church and everything, but I didn't truly know him as I do now. So at the retreat, there's always this beautiful time of adoration. And I didn't know really what that was. I had no idea. All I saw, was the priest coming around with this monstrance. And, and I think at that time I realized that, wow, that's Jesus. And I just, blood, tears in my eyes, like total, like surrender, never your heart was just on fire. Like, wow, I finally, felt at home. And I just remember feeling like this great big warm hug around me. And, after that, the session ended, and the woman who was the youth leader at the time, she, was like, how were you moved? And I was like, I need to become Catholic. Like, it was like right away. Like, I know that my family is not going to be happy about it because, they had some different feelings, but I'm like, I don't care. Like, I've never experienced God this way before. This is true. This is real. And I'll do it. And I'll be honest, like, going through the RCI process it caused a lot of tension in my family. It was really difficult, but it was so beautiful at the same time. And, and slowly, my family has warmed up to the idea and accepted that we are Catholic and we are who we are. And, and they support us. Definitely my side of the family anyhow, which is beautiful, and they see the beauty in it from afar. And I constantly pray for their conversion, that they have that powerful experience. But it was truly, Jesus in the monstrance, seeing him fully present and alive in the host. That just changed my life. And, every time I see that, like I still get teary-eyed, because it's just, to me, his true presence there is like none other. So that's kind of my story. And just that's why it's so powerful to just shape family and give, my heart, like to give my family everything that I didn't have growing up, like just the true Catholic culture, that we're more than just going to church on Sunday, that it's truly who we are. And that's kind of where I think God really put in my heart.
A lot of these touch chords with me. I'm a convert as well, but
Oh, wow.
that first sort of call to loving God, holy, and first with that, your heart won't rest until you find it. So there's this
Right.
uncomfortableness, this desire, but then kind of delving deeper, as Adam, some of the things you were talking about, where God creates each person for a specific calling, for a specific purpose. So really only by aligning yourself to his will for you will, again, you find that personal satisfaction of, this gift that he's given me, or this cross that he's given me, all fits together in his providence for exactly what he wanted me to do. And then that love and that all of those gifts just kind of seem to meld together into happiness, I guess, ultimately, but
Yeah.
satisfaction.
Absolutely, truly. Like, when you say that, I kind of chuckle, because growing up, I didn't really ever want children, and now, like, we have 7. Like, that is like, God, like, ha ha, you're open to what I want to give you, and here you go.
Right.
And it's beautiful, and I'm so grateful every day for all of them, but it's definitely kind of that kind of joke there. So.
Right. The beauty of our faith is that God speaks so much purpose into every individual human being. Like You are made in the image and likeness of God before you even get started. Oh, okay. Wow. Um, okay, that's amazing. And wait, there's more. I have this plan laid out that I have crafted with my very breath, with my very hands, just for you. Oh, so you think I'm a pretty big deal, Lord? That's what you're saying. Wow, and it's humbling. It's so humbling and it's overwhelming at times, quite honestly, just because Steve, just as you said, the more we align ourselves to this plan and God's divine will, really the more blessing He's able to pour out and pour into our lives. Because when we're in line, when we're close to Him, He can just lay it on us. He's like, all right, my good and faithful servant. It's not always good, but we can all attest to the fact that it's good. Life with Christ is very, very good, even when it's bad. and that's the beauty of our faith. And when her heart was softened at that retreat by the Eucharist, what was really amazing is I was able to be her sponsor when she went through RCIA. And so it was this incredible moment, right before we were set to get married, that really just brought us so close together and prepared us for that day. I always share that, and I always tell the kids that are like, "Aww," like kids I'm teaching or things like that. But because it's pretty romantic.
Yes,
it's a pretty sweet story, and it's been a gift to live it. It's been really a gift to live it and just be a part of it.
Yeah, that's the perfect start to marriage, because
Right.
the journey of marriage is walking together
Mm-hmm.
to be saved, to find. I mean, that's part of your vocation, but it's also,
Right.
as you mentioned earlier, where those problems get worked out, the perfection, the sufferings that you might have, walking together, that's obviously what God is calling you to do. So being able to start your relationship with that walk toward holiness together
Mm.
is just, yeah, it's the start of a lifelong journey, I guess, but the most appropriate sort of start for that lifelong journey.
Yeah. It really was. It really, really was. And thinking back now at the actual at our sacrament of marriage, and really those who are attending this Discernment Vocations Retreat, and those who are, even the leaders, what you're going to hear a lot at this retreat is kind of what we've been living, and striving to grow in holiness. The night before our marriage, we made sure that the priest who was witnessing our marriage, because the couple is actually the one that does the sacrament, but stands in witnessing for the whole body of the church. But the priest, he heard confessions for myself, for Pam, for our wedding party, and we had a time of adoration the night before the wedding. So I mean, we did that because we wanted to be as ready as we could be to receive the gift of the sacrament. If you don't clean your house, before a special guest is coming, then you're going to make a bad first impression. So we want to be ready, and we want to be prepared as we can be. And I think frequenting the sacraments, and the students that will attend this retreat, I'm sure will hear this a ton, but frequenting the sacraments and a life of prayer are just the keys. They're the keys to figuring out what this vocation is in their lives. They truly are. It's very simple. The Lord has really made it very easy and laid out a very specific way to find this vocation, to find holiness. He doesn't make us do guesswork. He's made it clear. He's made it clear. So it's exciting.
Something that you said there made me think of, I think it was Sherry Weddell in one of her books who writes about it, but talking about preparing for the sacraments or preparing for your vocation essentially. And that, yeah, those graces are going to come when you receive the sacrament. I mean, once you receive it, I mean, unless you're in a state of mortal sin, of course. Well, actually, the graces still generally come, but your preparation, how you've prepared yourself for that affects what sort of effect that grace can have on your soul. Because if you come in all messy and not prepared for that, yes, the graces will come, but not in the same way that they could have come had you cleaned the house and invited the guest in from the beginning. I
Right.
think that's
Yeah, so true.
Because there's always going to be a mess. There's always going to be brokenness. That's human nature, but
right.
are we doing everything we can to prepare and
Mhm.
to clean, quote unquote, as best we can? That's the life of holiness. That's the life we're called to. We're called to be saints. We're not called to live mediocre lives of faith. and
Right.
and and I feel like so many of the teens and even younger, the people that I work with both in ministry and at Kolbe, they have this impression that, oh, I can never be a Maximilian Kolbe. I can never be a Joan of Arc. These people were just on fire, and I don't know if I could do what they did. And I tell them, you're not supposed to. We need you to be right where you are and to be a saint. Right? You're not supposed to be Joan. You're not supposed to be Max. You're not supposed to be Padre Pio. You're supposed to be you, striving for holiness, showing others how the way, by your life. And they're like, oh, well, that sounds hard too.
Right.
Yes.
Yes, it is. It is. It is.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
It's that those graces are there, but we have to turn toward them, don't we? You have
That's
to
right.
accept. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's always interesting to kind of pair that up with, again, when earlier you were talking about, of course, God creating you individually and loving you personally and having a greater plan that you could ever possibly really imagine for yourself, or especially thinking I'm too small for these things, but to kind of match up. He made you to be right here and still to be this amazing tool, this amazing part of his creation and his plan for the salvation of the world.
Yeah.
Really
Yeah.
interesting. There's a
Ugh.
little struggle at times for those.
There is a struggle because we have a hard time believing that, that
Hmm.
God does think that highly of us. That's just
Yeah.
that's absurd, right?
Yeah,
But when we do start believing that, it challenges us to live differently. It challenges
mhm,
us to, just like the woman at the well, she came and Christ challenged her, okay, go and sin no more. Go and never be the same. Let your life be changed forever. And
Yeah.
that's
mhm,
we're just doing what the master has already done. Like when he was on earth, he made the way very clear.
right.
Overwhelming to receive all that, to
I know.
really
Yeah.
contemplate the depth of God's love for each one of us. That can be overwhelming, and it also it does, like you're saying, calls us to more, to give more of ourselves, respond in kind.
Mm,
That, not that we could ever match it, but to respond more
right.
than, oh, I'm so small, I can't possibly do anything. Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Right. And certainly to pick yourself back up again after the, like you said, we're going to be a mess all the time. We're going to keep falling. We're broken, but we have to remember that God's not asking that perfection of us from the beginning. I mean, before, yeah, while we were sinners, he saved us. So he loves us when
That's
we're
right.
dirty, and he wants us to pull us out of that nastiness that we're in. But that's the hammer of the devil. You always see, what you fall, and then it's like, well,
Mm,
you're no good anymore. You've broken things.
that's
So
right.
now, but that's not God's way. It's just the
Right. Those
just the
those are those are lies. Yeah. Those are lies, that the hammer of the devil, he certainly takes advantage of all those moments. When we doubt the plan, how could God ever call me to this life, to this vocation? And I think it's probably the most aggressive with young men that are discerning priesthood. How could God call me to lead, a parish, to be the hands that bring Christ to these people? I'm not worthy. You're right. None of our priests are worthy, but this is how God has chosen to give us the sacraments. So it's not about, it has nothing to do with being worthy. Nothing at all. It's about the call. What has God made us for?
Yeah, I think it's so true. I've been reading or looking at St. Peter, and it just reminds me of him. Like, God, I'm a sinner. Like, why are you calling me? I'm not worthy. And Jesus just looks at him. He's like, I know, but I'm calling you anyway. Like, and that's who he wants. He wants us, even the broken.
That's right. He can work with our willingness to be instruments. Yep. So our Kolbe students have been participating in this Vocations Retreat this week. They've heard from a number of speakers on a variety of topics. Let's talk for a minute about why now and in this format. This has been in the works for a long time. What do you think led to this timing and how it has come together in this format?
Absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, we are in the season of Lent. I think that's the most important why for the timing. Why do we plan it during this time of year? We're in the season of Lent. We're in the desert with the Lord, right? And it's important that we give Kolbe students an opportunity and an avenue in which they can step away from everything, even if it's for a couple days, to really grow in their faith and to understand better what this call is all about and what this way of holiness is all about. And the greatest treat and the most powerful thing about this retreat is that they'll hear from people in all states of life. So they will hear speakers that have chosen the vocation of marriage. They will hear speakers who are sisters, priests, brothers. I believe we even have consecrated virgins, those, lay women who have really given their lives just over to the service of Christ. Deacons, I believe, those who are in seminary in preparation to becoming priests. So, boy, the committee has just brought in every voice. And it's important to hear from all those voices, because if you've never talked to a brother or a priest or a sister and never learned about what that life is like, then how can you know you're called to it? How can you know that it's something that God has made you for if you don't know what that life is like? So that above all is the most important thing about this retreat that the students will take away. Many of the teachers, they're going to be present. They're kind of going to be facilitating and directing the rooms, and making sure the speakers are there. But there are many opportunities for breakout sessions. So the students will then have time with Kolbe teachers to really process what they're hearing, and not just to walk away and be like, oh, okay, that was nice. And it'll be fun too. It'll be a lot of fun, and time just well spent.
It's a great lineup with many speakers. We have Father Robert Spitzer from the Images Center of Reason and Faith speaking on the 4 levels of happiness. Topics such as trust and surrender and living virtuous lives will be addressed. And we have Father Stephen Gadberry back to speak about discernment. He was with us for a Facebook Live recently. We'll put the link to that in our show notes for people to check that out. Among many other speakers, as Mr. Castor was saying, it's a really great lineup, all kinds of people and opportunities for the students to ask questions and visit with each other. And there are also fun things planned like games and time for the students to process what they're hearing and kind of relax a bit and let it sink in.
Yeah.
Looks great.
Yeah.
So much work has gone into it. Looks great. Happy to see it all coming together. It's been a long time coming. A lot of work has gone into it for a while. And and praying for students to turn toward and be open to receiving the messages that God wants to send through these speakers. And that'd be wonderful. It's great that they're showing so many ways of answering God's call to each person in the word vocation. It seems like that a lot of times we think priesthood when we think vocations, like we pray for vocations, meaning vocations to the priesthood, but there are so many, each of us, as you've been sharing with us so well, all the different ways we answer the call of vocation. So let's talk on that note about vocations for Kolbe students and families as we move forward through Lent after this Vocations Retreat, how we as Kolbe students, Kolbe parents, Kolbe families find and live our vocations here and now, how he's calling us to know him here in the present in this season of life, whatever that's leading us to. What do you think about that?
Oh, this is so exciting, and I'll start just for a minute, and then I'll throw it to Pam because liturgical living is certainly a passion of hers.
Yeah.
But
Love it.
but I know, but how do we do it right here, right now? And I think the call every day again is holiness, but as families, just speaking to Kolbe families as a whole, because this community is not just for the students, this community is for the entire family. That is a part of Kolbe Academy. I think, boy, oh boy, just living every day as the domestic church, as church in miniature, as it's so called. In the catechism, the domestic church is the language that is used when this is spoken about. But it's very simply bringing the faith alive at home, living the liturgical calendar at home, not leaving it at the steps of the church, but living it in the home. And this is what the beauty of the Kolbe Academy format allows, whether it's live classes, homeschooling, whatever avenue the family has taken, it allows that freedom to be in the home and to make it the church in miniature. Because, believe it or not, that's where priests come from. That's where brothers come from. That's where sisters come from. That's where holy marriages come from. Mm-hmm. So we need more of that. So Pam has been called and earned the official title. Is it like liturgical living queen in the elementary elementary world, I think. And
fantastic.
And it's kind of stuck. Nicole O'Connor has dubbed her with this title. So
nice.
Yeah, Pam, I'd love you to share just what you're doing for the Kolbe community and what we do at home, because we don't just talk about it. We try our best to live it here too.
Yeah.
And that's all you can do is just try your best. There's nothing perfect to it. So growing up in my house, we didn't do any of this, as a convert. So it was such a new idea to me. And even through the RCI process, I don't recall that never came up in my learnings and my teaching. And one of my friends invited me to this Mother's Day, hey, let's learn about it. There was Kendra Tierney was going to talk about it. And I was like, a night out? Yeah, let's go do it. For me, I was like, I don't know what she's talking about, but heck, I'll take a few hours out and meet with some other moms, and we did, and I was blown away by just what she was saying and changing their culture, and so I was started diving into her book, and and slowly just that the idea of being Catholic is not just going to mass on Sunday, but it's just more of who we are, and I think that listening to Lord in our vocation as mother of the house, where, I have that influence to really help raise our children and guide their faith. So I kind of latched onto this idea, and slowly, we've been just doing simple changes, like when we're meal planning, to look at the meals and look at what feast days are coming up. It was St. Catherine Drexel yesterday. And so that, well, she's from Philadelphia. So at dinner, we had Philly steak and cheese, something simple like that. So, and then as we're eating dinner, like, hey guys, like, why are we eating this meal? And so we talked like, well, what do we know about her? What has she done? And so just simple like infusions, and if we don't know about them, we're like, hey Alexa, or our kids like know the theme song to Franciscan Media, like
Right.
because we reference it so much just to learn,
Yep.
about the saints, and so we're just doing small things around like our meals that work together, and then we've embraced traditions in our family, and I think traditions in our church are so important. It's really what carries our faith along, and so we have certain traditions, around certain saints or Lent practices, the fasting and the prayer and the almsgiving, and so we have, those traditions. And then like we love Michaelmas, and we always like we'll make a piñata, and that looks like the devil. And I swear our neighbors probably think we're crazy, but our kids remember it. They know it, and they have the love to smash it down, and we talk about it, overcoming sin, and they look forward to these traditions and really embracing, who you are. Like being Catholic is so much more, and looking at the lives of those others and just having conversations constantly in our family, just all the time, I think is super important. And just embracing that every moment can be a teaching moment, and we're all learning together all the time. We're learning so much more in our faith, and modeling that for our children, I think super, important. And like when we have personal prayer, I love it. Like you'll see like Adam in the morning, he'll have like his prayer books are like stacked up on the table. Like we don't hide anything, our children see it, and they model it. And, it's beautiful. Like, I don't even know. Some of them were like, yeah, mom, at nighttime, I was reading this prayer and this prayer. And I was like, you were like, yeah, didn't know that, when you're tucked in your bed and I think you're sleeping, you're doing those things. And it's just beautiful that slowly, what we model for them and what they grow up in, it just sinks into their pores, and it just really becomes who they are. I think that's so important.
That seems really fantastic. For me, that just connects so well. We at the beginning of Lent, we spoke with Jonathan Conrad of the Catholic Woodworker, and one of the things he was talking about was like the challenges of, okay, you've developed your own devotional life, your spiritual life that you're engaging in, but now all of a sudden you've got, in your case, 7 others that are at a different place, but you want to share this wealth and this thing. So it just seems like that's a connection, that making that part of their lives so everybody in the family can participate, like, oh, here's the connection and I'm getting it. I love Philly cheesesteak. And now I think of St. Catherine Drexel now when I think whatever the thing is. But yeah, it seems like that's a good bridge to that challenge that we spoke about in that episode.
Yeah. And and I think it's just very right, practical and natural. St. Lawrence, we're grilling chicken. You better believe it. Things like this, it's a lot of fun. Not following, a typical calendar, but following the liturgical calendar and just living by it. Okay, who's coming up this week? What feast days? Catholics love to party. Okay, we love to
Yeah.
celebrate. There's always a reason to celebrate, and
Yes.
and the liturgical calendar does that for us. So
Mm-hmm. And I think it's really fun and neat at Mass noticing, as the colors change. They're like, oh, Father Michael's wearing green today, or oh, he's wearing purple, or
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's kind of those little things. They are small, but they have great significance, and I think that's
yeah,
really
and liturgically in the church too, our pastor in our town, what's very, very powerful and it's subtle is when the season changes, the candle holders change. Everything changes. The monstrance that's used at Wednesday adoration changes. And so he kind of reinforces in a powerful way, like, okay, something is different in the liturgical year. We're in a different place right now. So we're blessed. We're blessed to have our priest.
At our parish, we have different sets of bells and sound makers
Uh-huh.
for during the consecration and the epiclesis. And it's interesting to see the responses. I think there's growing recognition the longer our pastor implements the same change that you're talking about for these
Mm.
different sounds that we hear during the mass, that it that's another way of recognizing this seasonal change. Yeah, it's just
Oh,
like you're saying. And of course with
that's
the different
beautiful.
colors changing things. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's just bringing it back to kind of personal vocation as you're saying this, because that's listening to those changes and those things as you're going through, like, what am I supposed to be doing in my life, sort of thing. What is God's personal call for me? It's those subtle changes or those subtle things that seem to kind of guide you as well, to say, okay, something's different. So that either a longing or um, dissatisfaction sometimes, or just as, I don't know, something. I don't have it clearly worked out, but something when you were saying that just seems, those little hints, those little calls that get your attention subtly sometimes, but then build. You start to see, okay, this isn't right. This is not the right direction for me. I'm supposed to change to be over here. So I don't know. There's something there. I don't,
Yeah, I think you're speaking of just the longing of the heart, because even those that are not a part of the body of Christ, they're still created in the image and likeness of God, and so they have within their very being this deep longing for God, even if they don't know his name yet, even if they don't know who God is. Like, Christopher West, I'm a huge fan of, and he's spent his entire life essentially making theology of the body accessible for us, because John Paul II was brilliant and a philosopher, and sometimes his language can be over our heads. And Christopher West talks about the cry of every human heart, this deep longing that's embedded in our very core, that longs for God. And what happens so often is we try and fill this hole with things, with other things. We try and fill this hole with things of the world that are temporary and that simply do not fit in the God-shaped hole which remains within our heart. They do not fill it. They do not suffice. They never satisfy us. And it is only God that can do so. Christopher West describes it like, in a sense which I love, and it's a great image. He describes it in such a way, saying that all of this longing, all of our human passions and desires, they are good, but they become misdirected. And so we need to think of ourselves like a rocket ship. And if the rocket ship is heading towards God, it will shoot straight into the heavens and we will be fulfilled. But sometimes our rocket ship goes to the left or the right and crash lands in the ocean and goes all over the place, and so and so realizing that God made us this way with purpose, we just need to direct all of that desire rightly towards God, right? And fill that longing with God, because that's the only thing that will satisfy us. Nothing else.
this is ordering my thoughts very well. So thank you, Adam.
I was feeling that. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is
Nice.
when I was some of my management jobs or executive jobs that I've done. One of my goal has always been to try to get people finding their personal vocation, doing what they should be doing, whether it was when they're working for me, their job, or get them out of there and get them doing, well, hopefully something for me that's also good that they love doing,
Right.
or get them on to the next thing. And that's one of the things we would go back and start talking about, like, well, what did you want to be when you were a child? And what are the things you really love doing? And because again, like going back way to the beginning of this conversation, that personal vocation is checking off the longings that you have in your heart are put there by God to lead you
Right.
to that personal vocation. So if you're finding, I mean, certainly the call to sin can be temporarily pleasant, but obviously not lasting. But those
Mhm.
things that you, why I really love doing this. Well, God gave you that love of that. So
Right.
how does that fit now into this overall vocation of what you're called to be and do?
That's right. That's right. And remembering too that priests and sisters also have hobbies, and they're very much
Mhm.
encouraged and allowed to do so. They're not they're not in this very strange way, shackled to just the vocation. They're people. They have likes and interests, and it's important for especially children and teens to be exposed to that, to see that okay, they kind of live a normal life. They just
Mhm.
live it slightly different, slightly
Mhm.
different than a married couple would. It's a
Mm-hmm.
different call, but they still religious sisters. They live in a community. They have good friends, and they have, yes, they pray. We all should pray. We're all supposed to be doing that. um, theirs is just a bit more structured for them, and it's like, okay, this is when we pray. Oh, okay, great. Us, we have to be more disciplined and really figure that out on our own, in the state of marriage. But they also have leisure time, and they also go out and serve and do what they love. Brothers and sisters, they're in just all sorts of different professions and fields, just serving. Teacher, nurse, missionary work. They're everywhere. They're everywhere. And so, I mean, it's important for Kolbe students to know this. They're just people. Wow.
Right.
They're regular people. Wow.
With gifts and talents
when
too. Great.
when you're when you're talking about that, it was making me think of Father Stephen Gadberry, one of our speakers this week in Vocations Week, and he's our parish pastor down in Arkansas. But
Okay.
he is a self-professed redneck. So
Excellent.
he loves hunting. He loves taxidermy sort of things,
Hmm.
CrossFit and all of these things. But those again longings in his heart have made him given him a special gift to speak to our parish there in Arkansas, that he can relate with people that might have thought that the parish priest is not somebody you talk about that deer hunting with or turkey or whatever. But here Father Stephen is doing CrossFit at the gym with these guys, and
Right.
uh, he's out there hunting, and that
Yeah,
connects him then with the parish that God has given him or God
that's
has
right.
led him to.
I was thinking of the same of him working out and people feeling like they could approach him and talk to him because they encountered him in that setting and it was less, they,
Mhm.
he was more approachable to them in that context and led to them coming closer to God that way.
Boy, and that's powerful for our priests and religious to show their humanness. I think of Pope Francis. You have to smell like the sheep. Like the shepherd. If the shepherd doesn't smell like the sheep, then the sheep won't recognize it. You have to smell like the sheep. Not obviously not in the way of sin, but just like Father Gadberry does. He's very open about his likes. He goes hunting. He spends time outside the parish, present as a priest, just doing things that he enjoys doing. and that's powerful.
I've often even thought that God uses those flaws that we've had or the sinfulness that we're trying to recover from as well, of course he does. He
Mm.
uses those in our vocation as well, but the image I've always seen even for that part, so everything that's happening, God doesn't throw those away. He utilizes them and helps
Hmm.
that work that in. When you think about gemstones, oftentimes there's gems are very kind of clear and lifeless to a certain extent, but it's those kind of imperfections or the infusions of different things that give them the color. So you wouldn't want all of that thing, but a little bit has changed that from being one thing into this other beautiful thing. So
Mm.
you have to have forgiveness and you have to get past it. But I think sometimes that even the times where you're in sin or you had challenges, those help you to oftentimes reach people to feel more sympathy, to feel more connectedness with a group of people that then need God's healing, and you can become an instrument for them. I think that's what I mean to say. Not that sin is beautiful, but
No, no, no.
but yeah,
No,
all
I
of those things.
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, Stephen, connected to it so well, because I think God uses not so much sin, but I think our greatest moments of brokenness to really lead us.
Right, right.
He takes those broken moments and uses them to lead us on our path to what we're called to do, to our vocation. I mean, the biggest reason that I got involved in ministry so early in my life, specifically with teens and youth ministry, is because high school was terrible for me. It was the worst 4 years of my life, and I would never ask to relive it ever. But from that, from
Right.
that, I was led on a path, and I got started, and I had, a youth minister there to really just direct and guide me, and she's one of our dear friends, still to this day, and I'm so thankful for her in every way. But yeah, our mess, our brokenness can really lead us to our vocation
Mhm.
if we allow in that moment when we've just lost everything, or are in a really dark place, when we cling to God, and when we allow him to grab us by the hand and pick us up out of that pit and walk with us and say, okay, let's start rebuilding here, let's make something new. Just as he said on the way of the cross, behold, I make all things new. When we watch the Passion of the Christ, every Good Friday, and that's the most heartbreaking moment when he's like face to face with his mother, and he's carrying the cross, and he says that. I'm like, oh, it's that for me, like that. Okay, I'm breaking down. I'm done.
Mhm.
I'm done. Like that. That's always the moment, um, it's so good, and Christ shows us that from brokenness comes so much beauty, with his own life, and the way of the cross. So
And we have so many of those opportunities, we'll call them, in family life where we
hmm
experience each other's brokenness, that is one way that we can help each other find and live our vocations, if we can look at it that way. I mean, we have to work through what has happened, of course, and tend to the
hmm
things that need tending to, but among those things being how we are continually, hopefully, in conversation with God to discern where he's calling us.
yeah, and I think the last thing I'll say to that is, I feel that so many families are so busy and so much on the run today that they don't have time to butt heads, in, if you will, and grow and come closer together through that. Like, so I've had this revelation recently where, when I'm butting heads with Pam or the kids, like, I'm almost thankful for it, because I tell Pam this sometimes. I'm like, hey, at least we're close enough that we're having these conversations.
True.
Because it's a different perspective, it's a different way of thinking, but I think a lot of families don't even have an opportunity to grow closer together in that way, and be family, because they're so busy.
Yeah, that's and again for all of our the families and things. I think that's so important because obviously, husband and wife coming together, you realize, okay, I thought I was a patient person, for example, and then you get married and you realize, no, it wasn't that I was patient. It's just that I didn't have the opportunity to even get aggravated quickly. Or, then as you expand with your children, each time you start to see, oh, I, the facade that you put in front of everybody else when you go out into the world, largely that, I've got it
Right.
together. I'm a virtuous person wandering around, and that gets wiped away when you're there every day in the family. When you get the time to butt heads, And then you also have the time to ask for forgiveness and be forgiven.
Mm.
And that's something that you don't see outside the family very easily as well. Normally, if you're going to butt heads with somebody, it's kind of like, I'll just ignore them. I don't have to interact with them. But you've got to be around your family every single day, you know? So that's where I see Christ-like forgiveness the most usually. And it's like, okay, yeah, you really messed up.
Mm-hmm.
But in a day, it's not that it never happened, but it is forgiven in a way that's more whole. It's not like 20 years later you're thinking back to what happened. It's just, no, we love each other. We mess up, we pick each other up, and we move on. So it's a great opportunity for that.
Mm-hmm. And even I think, showing and modeling from such a young age. It was just, I chuckle when you say that, because I think it was even last night, our youngest, he did something, and I don't remember what it is now. It's gone. But I said, what do you need to tell Daddy at dinner? And he said, sorry. And then like his next word, now you say forgive you, Daddy. Like, because
Right.
I just know, like, we
Yes.
apologize and we forgive, and it just, he's 3, and to know that, like, to me is a great blessing. So,
That's great.
and to
That's
know that
fantastic.
our Heavenly Father does the same thing, I think is so important.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I was thinking earlier
Beautiful.
about the modeling here. That's a very important time to model how this should go.
And as you know, as a married couple, it's incredibly challenging. Don't get me wrong, but we make a very outward effort and just kind of show them that we prioritize our relationship first. We show our children that nurturing our marriage and nurturing our relationship, we understand and we know that will affect family life. And so prioritizing that, because that is our primary vocation, and children are the fruit of that vocation, but showing them that that's really a priority is important, in hopes that if they are called to marriage, they will do the same things, in their relationship and in their marriage. So, all right, that was scary. I listen. I know.
Yep, and very likely that's what they see in their family of origin, they take with them, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so it has been a delight visiting with you all. As we are coming to the end of our time together, I wanted to go back a little bit to the liturgical living that you were talking about, Mrs. Castor. So Kolbe sends out emails every month, liturgical living emails with lots of suggestions. It sounds like you have quite a lot to do with those. Am I correct there?
I do. Yes,
Okay.
you are correct.
Okay.
There. Yes. And it's nothing like all on me originally. It's just things that I have researched, and, it's kind of like a menu of options that
Wonderful.
I have, found in different places. And I just wanted to share them. And so it was just really, it started off last year as like, hey, Nicole, can I share this with my families, my students? Because these are some of the things that we're doing at our house. And I'd like to share. And she was like, yeah, sure. And then it was like, hey, I want to share this with the elementary staff. And now when she's like, hey, I want to share with everybody. I was like, okay,
Great.
that's great. I'm so
Yes.
glad. So I'm so happy to do that and just, and share. But know that it's not any original, and there's not a whole lot of original ideas to me. It's what I found in collecting of lots of other Catholic mamas around, that do it. So
I think it hits just the right note. There are wonderful ideas, lots of different ways to live the liturgical life of the church without, it doesn't come across as like, okay, you got to do all these in order to be living it correctly. Just find what works for your family. And there are lots of ways to accomplish that. Here, we're coming up on the Feast of St. Joseph, one of my favorites. And I've had seasons of better success than others of living more closely in rhythm with the liturgical life of the church in the family, doing the various feast days throughout. One of the things that we like to do, we started several years ago and we've missed some years, is for the Feast of St. Joseph to trace the children's hands on a piece of white paper. They trace their hand and cut it out, and you can curl it up into form like a lily, the symbol of St. Joseph, and we have them write their name on it, like "Love you, Dad," whatever, sign their name and the date so that we know what year it was. And and then we tape them to a green straw, and the straw is not the hang up. That can't be the deal killer if there's not a straw. It's like, anyway. My husband still has them. This collection of lilies from over the years from the Feast of St. Joseph. when our kids were young, I wanted to make that like the Father's Day thing, like Happy Feast of St. Joseph to all the dads around. So Happy Feast of St. Joseph to you too, a little bit early, and to the dads listening. That was something that I could do at the time when everybody was little. I could have them trace their hands. That was something I could accomplish that day. Keeping it sort of where you are in time. And we've had a couple of other Kolbecast episodes that have touched on liturgical living. We visited with the Holy Heroes parents in episode 63, I think. And we'll link that in our show notes. And it came up again with Jonathan Conrad, and it's come up a few other times. So it's such a gift to us to have this liturgical calendar that we can draw upon in our families. We don't have to come up with stuff necessarily. It's right there for us to draw upon. So that's been great. Okay. Are there other final thoughts you have, or recommendations or resources you have for our families, thinking as we travel forward through Lent and thinking about the idea of vocations, living them the here and now, helping our children discern their vocations going forward in their lives, anything like that?
I think the only advice that I have is just to be patient with yourself and to be patient in your prayers, and just know that just because one person seems to have it all together, you don't have to.
Yeah.
And, just be open to it, just whatever whisper, sometimes it just might be a whisper. Sometimes it just might be a feeling. Sometimes it might be just like when I was, a full blown, like messy cry, you just never know what it is. And just, just to be open to the possibilities and just be open to what God might be calling you to, and, families and students.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. And I think Pam already mentioned Kendra Tierney, and she was really just a huge influence in our start to liturgical living. But vocations, just the family is the seedbed of vocations. It's where vocations are born, and so I think liturgical living answers the question to how do I promote and grow vocations within the walls of my home, because it makes our children and helps our children realize that living as a Catholic is fun. And just as Pope John Paul II says, life with Christ is the greatest adventure. We're not made for the mundane. We're not made for the boring or mediocre or to just settle. We're made for this great plan. We're made to fill this great plan that God has prepared and made clear for us. And it's an adventure. It's exciting. It's exciting to live the faith. It's exciting to be Catholic, because it is a challenge, and because it does test us, and because on a daily basis it does help us grow. So just build that domestic church, and vocations will come naturally. Obviously, if you do have a teenager who is very interested, in a vocation, start seeking out first your parish priest. Seek out your parish priest and talk to them. Expose them to religious orders. Like I said before, if they don't know what the life is like, then they won't be able to know if they're called to it or not. It's a very commonsensical thing, but it's just there, and it's very real. If they don't know what a sister does, then how do they know if they'd be interested or called at all?
Right.
So just live it. Let's just talk about it and just do the best you can. Like, liturgical living is about doing the best you can, and there are ups and downs to it, and family is crazy.
Yeah.
And it's not like, don't play the shame game when you don't do the massive spread and preparation for a feast day. Just stick with the hand cut out for St. Joseph.
Yeah.
Keep it very simple.
Yep.
And that's how vocations are born. And coming to retreats like this one. The retreat is so important. Going on retreat, going to the high mountain like Christ did, is essential in figuring this thing out. So thanks again for having us. It really was.
Thank you so much. And fun.
It's been a pleasure. Hope we get to visit with you all again soon. Please come back soon. Thanks so much.
Of course.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Subscribe to the Kolbe Cast on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss an episode. And let us know how we're doing by leaving a rating or a review. And as always, feel free to email us at podcast@kolbe.org.
Mary, our Mother, pray for us. St. Maximilian Kolbe, pray for us. Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam.